Hey everybody, welcome to week, gosh, what is it? 236, I think. Bajillion. I think that's what it is. So anyway, this is the last one before Christmas. So Christmas, do your shopping, get your ugly sweater, like get those out, man. To what?
236.
236, yeah. All
Yes.
right, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so there we go. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about. Yeah, government shutdown, which is likely going to happen. Oh, I'm glad Vivek actually read the 1,500 page thing that had, pay raises in for themselves and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Oh, and also, I think this is, I think this is the, this is, this is where all those orbs, this is it.
Mystery solved. Yeah.
Mystery solved.
My son busted out his yesterday, apparently flying it in the house. I mean, it's a small one, but
Yeah,
it's funny. And but it goes to show, I think there's a renewed interest in drones because I feel like a lot I've seen some flying at night, and I think people
yeah,
are just building up or participating in the hype of all of that because it's okay, well, is that a plane? Is that a drone? Is that, and
yeah,
I'm not an expert on drones, but I think I can tell the difference between them when they're flying low enough over houses kind of thing as to what's what.
yeah.
And the pattern of lights and everything else, because I'm a nerd and I pay attention to those kind of things, starboard, port side of airplanes and things like that. So,
Yeah.
um, but yes, so I think that, and I asked my son if he flew it outside, and he said no, and I said okay, good, because I
Yeah.
don't want to get it
Boom.
shot down. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I've got some double shot in my shotgun that's ready. So yeah, and I don't want to have to do it because, then the feds will come knocking on my door. So anyway, the weird thing about that is the orbs. Like that is like that's funky. Like I want to know what's going on. I will tell you this. I was in a wheat truck and it was probably 10:30 at night and I was probably 14 in the field in like late June in Kansas because we were harvesting because rain was coming the next day. So we were working till midnight that night, and we saw three red lights that came zooming over, and they were in a triangle. Three red, not red, green, white, but three red. And this is long before drones had been invented. Um, and supposedly it was a UFO sighting. We didn't know what the heck it was, but I remember sitting on in the back of that wheat truck going, that is the weirdest thing. So who knows? Don't know.
They are amongst us. Just deal with it.
Evidently.
That's what I tell
Evidently.
people.
Evidently. So yeah, we'll see. Before we dive into the, like CR and that whole mayhem, which, what are we going to do about it? I think what we do want to know about is like, all right, so what does that really mean? What's going to continue? Which, because we had a 30-day shutdown not that long ago. What was it? Was that in 2022?
Yeah, I feel like it's like Groundhog Day. I mean, it's kind of the same issue that just, and I don't remember it being as recurring as far as, I mean, we actually had a shutdown, yes, but the threat
Yeah,
of it always seems to come up
every year.
every year at every time there, and then at the extension period. So the proposed
All right.
extension this time was until March. We would have had another discussion a few days before that. Okay, who's holding out? Who? And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
magically, things get resolved at 11:58 p.m. on the deadline. So it is. Same as it was before, same issues, a little bit different spin this time though. And so, what you have is, and I
Yeah.
just have some quotes here about Mike Johnson scrapping last minute measure. The deadline is tomorrow, and that the measure included disaster aid, healthcare policy extenders, and the usual pay raise for members of Congress, amongst other things. A price tag of more than $100 billion just for disaster relief, part of it. Um, the plan from what I'm reading, was it was supposed to be a streamlined version of what was out there, and then pursuant to kind of how the Republicans roll for the most part, and then there is allegedly a concession that Mike Johnson said, no, we need to put all this stuff in, and so Republicans got upset, and then a new player on the scene, um, you know, guy who owns a few car dealerships or manufactures cars got into the mix of it, and basically on his platform had a few words to say, which
Oh yeah.
apparently caused some Republicans to really get adamant about opposing it. And then so what was supposed to be, something turned out to not be what they thought it was going to be. And then, yeah, so I mean, talk about Elon Musk getting involved in all that. So that's my understanding of what happened. And that what is also interesting, again, this is not a political statement, that Trump is rallying against the increase in spending, but yet wants to increase the debt limit. So I'm a little bit confused. I mean, I understand those are two different things, but I mean, it's not consistent with kind of, I think, thoughts on economic policy. I'm not an economist. I don't play one on TV, and so I don't know, but it seems be a little bit inconsistent. So
Adam is probably as close to an economist as we get here. Bar's kind of low, but
so here begins the rant, maybe.
yeah, come
Yeah.
on, Adam. Like
Oh,
he's
he's
just
holding
simmering.
back. He's holding back. Go for it. We won't judge.
Um, ugh, you're just seeing what I always have to win. I'm never going to compromise. Looks like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like so it which I think is it's just going to be tough because there's just not enough of a margin, you know.
yeah,
So in other words, like if you just again if you just think about the dip, going. Sorry for ranting. So this will be my rant because I just, I heard, they were talking about gerrymandering in the North Carolina congressional districts on the news this morning, which is I mean, we're pretty close to 50-50 state. You got both parties, when they're empowered, gerrymander things to such a degree that it was hard for the other party to be representative or, have any say. So you've got a group of people that say, shut it down and burn it down, but they're never really up for election, because they're never like they're
yeah,
running in places where they can't lose. In other words,
yeah,
like, Gary, you can win. So that, versus people that are in congressional districts that, like, I love. What is it Mike Waller, the guy from New York, Jack, that um one in a Biden Harris district, so it's like you got people that are winning in districts where the president was a different party that was voted for. It's like they can't, they have to be more compromise oriented, which I think is more representative of where we're at as a country. So I just feel like the people that, the burn it down people don't have to face the consequences. And at the same time, you can make the counter argument that the, hey, make a compromise people don't have to live with the consequence either, because they just seem to be like, run the debt up, run the debt up, run the debt up. So I think,
yeah.
I guess what I would say about the rant, and that I love hypocrisy for a minute, Gary, right?
Yes.
So if you go back, you'll see it on an old LinkedIn post that I have. But for the people that are like, you know, Doge, baby, that's the answer, Doge. Well, I would like everyone to recall that A, the Congressional Budget Office actually produced a plan that they update periodically of what it would take to reduce the deficit. And that plan includes, it's got two versions. Version 1 is the painful. They actually call it the painful version. You know, version 2 is the easier version. You know, and neither party has adopted any of the ideas
Wow.
that are in those two plans that were produced by our own nonpartisan government experts. Independent of this. So, you know what? They're full of crap. Don't listen to them. They're in government. What do they have to say? Well, our own Erskine Bowles, you know, got together with Mr. Simpson and came up with something that we might all recall from the Wayback Machine called the Simpson-Bowles Plan that
Yeah.
was designed to do the same thing. Eliminate the deficit. This was under Obama. And it was subsequently ignored by both parties. So I just, you know, my rant is not optimistic about anything going anywhere, Garrett. Gary or Jack.
Yeah. Well, going through Congress, it's going to be executive orders and doging, I
Yeah,
guess.
and what'll end up you got an executive order, and then that'll get challenged in court, and then 2 years later it'll get adjudicated, but then the House will flip. And it's like
Yeah.
that's a cynic in me. Sorry.
Groundhog Day.
That's right.
Yes. And
That's
then
right.
we probably should talk a little bit about the interest rate getting cut. It's anyone's guess at any period of time over the past several weeks what's going to happen and what's going to happen in 2025. And so they did lower it 25 basis points. So the range is 4.25 to 4.5. There was speculation earlier this year that they would maybe do a full point, continue to do decreases, maybe even a full point into next year, starting next year, but progressively over the course of time. But they're backing down on that. And so what you have is, yes, less cost, a slightly less cost of borrowing money. Will that stimulate the economy? I think that, again, I'm not a member of the Fed, one of the governors of the Fed, but I would suspect that they're taking baby steps and seeing the incremental reaction. It's kind of like one of those, if it's kind of like maybe doing, I was going to say Jenga, that's kind of the opposite of it, but I was going to say that if you have a scale and you're trying to equalize it. Oh, I know what it is. I was thinking about, earlier this morning, one of the old scales that you would weigh, and then you'd have the
The
little
slider.
blocks that move.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to
Yeah.
incrementally move the top one to
Yeah.
so exactly, what that's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about what the Fed is doing with these, slow decreases and then waiting for a period of time to see what happens, to see if it's going to balance out or if they need to move a little bit more to get to, that equilibrium that they're looking for. So, how's that analogy for the day? Now you think about that
Well,
every time.
it harkens back to wrestling and all that, right? um the surprise to me was 1100 point, or I think it was an 1100 point drop in the Dow yesterday.
Yeah,
Pretty severe.
it's on a big downward choo-choo train.
Yeah, like what's up with that? It was under sugar high euphoria after the election and just going through the roof, hitting, who would have thought 45,000? I remember, dang, remember when it went, what was it, down to 7,000? No, it was below, lower than that during '08, right? I mean, it went down low. Who would have ever thought it hit 45,000? Now it's at 42,470 today, right now. Why the extreme swings? Does anybody know what time it is? Does anybody really care?
Yeah.
This is one of those things that I put my head in the sand, and I shouldn't at my age, but I continue to do that because I cannot, there's so many stressful things in our lives, in my life,
Yeah,
that okay, I don't enjoy watching the up and down. I've gotten
yeah,
my kids into that. Like I remember years ago, we put some money that was gifted to them by grandparents into a, a generational fund for their age. But
yeah.
then I thought that really, you can't really see what's going on. So we bought Disney stock, one or two shares of Disney stock. So they've watched that go up and down and kind of seeing, and that way they can see what's going on in the world and maybe how the market is reacting kind of thing. And then my son, being into all tech, he bought some I think it's the company that owns Grand Theft Auto and other
Oh
games,
yeah.
just to see. And he's actually tracking so the 25 launch of the next version of it and see how that is impacting now pre-launch and then what might happen afterwards. So
That's
but
smart.
other than that, I'm just okay, well, I hope there's something there at the time that I'm pulling money out of it. So
I'm with you, man. Totally with you. And I'll be hitting it before you do. So, oh man. Um, all right. So we haven't been able to figure out the stock market. We haven't been able to figure out what in the world Congress is doing besides taking care of themselves and trying to look like, they're fighting for us. No, they're not. What I guess the question that our viewers and listeners should be paying attention to is like, all right, seems like a shutdown's coming. What does that mean? What does that mean to average Joe and to business owner?
well, what's interesting is that that the government posted that they've notified their own people to be prepared for and have a contingency plan for doing that. And so they're preparing. And so what does that mean? That means that, okay, if there's a government shutdown, first of all, we don't necessarily know what that means, because what you've seen in prior government shutdowns is certain areas of the government shut down, but not the essential areas. Okay. Someone asked me, oh my gosh, am I gonna now I'm waiting for USPS to deliver that present that I waited till the last minute to get from my spouse. Okay. That's probably not
Uh-oh.
going to be a problem. Right. And so, yeah, those kind of things. Military is not going to shut down. So we're talking about some important services like social services type agencies that may close. I mean, and at a time where I think the next few days the temperatures are going to stay warm, but I mean it's going to start dipping down. So you want the shelters and the other ministries to keep on going without interruption. But for private businesses, we rely upon the federal government in ways that maybe we don't realize. So, for example, delivery services. We rely upon agencies like customs agencies to get goods into the country that we are then going to distribute. We rely on the agencies to get stuff to us for parts that go into the stuff that we make as business owners. And so those are the kind of things that I think about that well, first of all, I don't, they're probably going to find a way to make it happen one way or another. They're going to band-aid this. So don't hold that to me. That's not legal advice. That is not practical advice. That is just Jack theory or dad
So
theory,
that is
I should
not
say, right?
Shoemaker's
It is
Capitol Hill
definitely not.
white
Definitely
paper.
not. No. And I have not heard any rumors or anything else, but that's typically what they're going to do, especially in this season. They're not going to, I mean, no politician is going to be assessed blame for or accept blame for shutting things down 4 days before Christmas. So I just don't think it's going to happen, but it also should make us more aware of when these things tend to happen so that we can be prepared. So maybe we increase the inventory in the warehouse. Maybe we, have some other contingency plans. So, anything that impacts us that in our businesses and our employees as well. So it could be that, I don't know, a federally funded daycare is going to get maybe closed. And so what does that mean? An employee may not be coming to work. So I can think of some practical things, but maybe some kind of bizarre things that may impact us. But I really think that this is a good time to look into how something like this, if it were to occur, which again, I don't think it's going to, if it were to occur, what is your contingency plan to deal with personnel, with supply chain, and with your output? How are you going to get your stuff out the door? And it may be that you have every possible account possible: FedEx, UPS, USPS. In fact, we were talking yesterday, my kids at dinner, and they're like, okay, well, they didn't understand. They heard USPS and they thought UPS. And I said, okay, let's
Oh,
talk
right.
about the differences in DHL. Okay, so we have something coming from overseas via DHL as a present that, thank goodness, it will show up hopefully tomorrow. And so those are the kind of things I think about.
Guess who else is shut down in the shutdown, Gary?
Who?
Like we just lost Jack, the IRS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they'll have, you know, some essential core functions will remain in effect, but for all intents and purposes, yeah, you've been waiting on a refund, been waiting on a tax notice to get resolved. You got a question? Um, no dice for you. So you will not be getting through the IRS. You'll be getting a call saying, "Hey, we're furloughed." So we
That's
didn't.
assuming you could get through to them to begin with. So
I
maybe,
know. It's
yeah,
like it's
yeah,
just
same.
funny. It's like if I just think through, like, we didn't really need another reason to freaking procrastinate in the tax world, but it's like, you know, storms, COVID, all bad things, but it's like, you know, just want to get people's tax returns done.
Yeah.
I did, like, in other words, like, I was finally looking forward to saying, nobody's changed any dates, period. It's like, well, guess what? Now we're probably gonna change
Yeah, the
something.
hard part is if we can't get stuff from clients because, oh, hey, they moved the deadline, we can't do anything and we're trying to get it out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been, think of it, man, almost 5 years. Almost
So,
5 years. Crazy.
Yeah, and I would be concerned also. So don't anticipate that any deadlines are going to be extended or anything like that, because I can imagine a scenario where the feds, like the IRS and others, would say, "You guys knew that this was just posturing, so don't expect some grace from us.
Yeah.
Get your stuff together like you normally would do in Q1. Get it to your CPAs and get your stuff filed." And so obviously I'm being flippant about that, but I mean, I think that really is we've become accustomed to this threat of government shutdown, that it really shouldn't impact our behavior in preparing filings and things like that. I think but it does, as I said before, I think we should be thinking about what happens when something bad happens to part of our business that is out of our control.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so speaking of some things that we can control, I'm going to throw this to you, Adam. Deadlines for R&D credits, energy efficient investments, and some retirement contributions. Can you talk about that? Because we are fast approaching deadlines 12/31.
yeah, I mean, probably the biggest one in there. I mean, obviously, with a lot of those, if you get, you need to spend the money and incur the expense in the calendar year that you plan on taking the deduction for. So that goes without saying. Retirement contributions, though, a little bit of an exception in the sense of, you know, even if I haven't fully funded the retirement contribution until the subsequent year, I can go ahead and take a deduction for the calendar year associated with it. So, for example, if I'm going to contribute in my 401k, it may be the contribution doesn't go until January, but I get a deduction for it in December. And then for owners of companies, there's some other exceptions around how you can stretch out that contribution. But what a lot of people get wrong, though, is that, you know, a lot of the retirement planning companies will say, well, hey, tell me what you paid yourself and I'll tell you what you can contribute. And it really needs to be the opposite. It needs to be, here's what I want to contribute. So based on what I want to contribute, what do I need to pay myself? Because that payroll needs to happen before the end of the year.
Yeah, good point.
And then,
Um,
the
Go
one
ahead.
The one other thing that people should be aware of too is that that especially if they've had kind of a big year and they otherwise have charitable intentions. A lot of times you think, okay, well, I just sold my company, Gary. That's the most money I'm ever going to have in my lifetime. Never going to have this again. I'd like to donate money to charity. I don't really know who yet, but I want to offset some of these proceeds. What can I do? And if I do a charitable contribution in a future year in the amount that I want to do, I'm not going to have enough income to offset it. So in that scenario, when I want to do a big contribution, but I don't know exactly where it's going to go, um, there are two things you can do. One of which is a charitable remainder trust, which I'm not going to talk about a whole lot because it has some other factors. But you can donate into what's called a donor advised fund, which Foundation of the Carolinas is a good example of a donor advised fund, whereby I'm donating to a big not-for-profit that is then going to dole out the money in my direction in the future. So my deduction happens when I donate to the Foundation of the Carolinas, and then after that, if I dole out 1/5 of it, I don't get a deduction again. I got the big deduction when I donated to the Foundation of the Carolinas. So that's a good one if it's like, hey, I had a big year and I really want to offset it, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it, and I otherwise am just going to donate some money to charity. That's another one of those needs to be done before the end of the year. You can't, you know, unlike other things that Jack would be willing to be shady and backdate. Just kidding. That's not for the shoemaker. That's not one of them that we're going to win.
Yeah, just so you guys know, I've never known Jack to be shady or do backdating. He's been by the book. So just to clear the air, even though Adam likes to dig at him.
Thank you. I do, since this is kind of our last session of three, want to put a few things out there on the legal side of things, and we've talked about this a lot, and it's related to employee retention, recruitment, and what your employment contracts say. What happens sometimes is you have an employee that over the course of time is given additional responsibilities, and that may be commensurate with additional pay that is paid to that person. Many times there is a forgetfulness that their employment is pursuant to a written employment contract that is static. It's a stitch in time that was created at a prior time. And so what I'm saying is that the evolution of the employee as far as their duties and their compensation and other things sometimes does not make its way into the written agreement between the employee and employer. Fast forward to a time where the employee feels like that they are not being sufficiently compensated, that they feel like that they've been, and I had this conversation earlier this morning on the way into the office with a friend who's a client, and she was telling me, I'm doing much more work than I agreed to do, and I don't know what to do. I don't want to do anything now because I don't want to hurt the business or the owner at this time of year, and also doesn't want to impact her bonus. But she's saying there are times where, and I will continue, I will do this more so in the coming year, where I'm going to tell them, yeah, that's outside the scope. I'll help you when you get it to the point where it's within my scope of what I'm supposed to be doing. But the worker stuff is not what I'm supposed to be doing and not what you're paying me for. And so, but she again doesn't want to tell them that. So my point is that go back and I feel like we've said this many times, but it's worth saying again. Go back and look at your arrangements with your employees and make sure that it says, if there's a definition for cause and there is not doing what your duties are, and there is a list of duties, whether in the employment agreement or in the back as an exhibit or a schedule, you need to kind of update those things for what that person is actually doing. And so that way you can actually use it as a weapon down the road and say, you didn't do what you're supposed to do. and you don't get back, well, my agreement doesn't say that I was supposed to do that. Yeah, I was doing it because was doing a favor for the company and hoping, get it, helping it limp along and get through a period of difficulty, but that isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh yeah, you're supposed to be doing that. So that avoid that back and forth. But then also on the positive side of things, look at what you are offering. We've talked about the difference between, um, you know, uh, what are the incentives of keeping? Is it retention or is it incentive? And so are you handcuffing someone to the business, or are you incentivizing them to continue on with the business? And so it may be that what you are offering or what you've been offering in to your employees should be modified in the coming year, because you have found that maybe something else motivates that particular person in a way that you were not expecting. So, and again, you have the piece of paper that says, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm going to get paid. This is what I'm going to get paid. So, and so, and I also understand and appreciate that a lot of employees don't have written agreements. So I would say then look at your employment manual, or look at what your course of dealing, course of performance is with respect to bonuses and things like that. The whole, Griswold thing. And I go back to, hey, we depend on those bonuses, as if they're, and so have clear policies that, is it truly discretionary? And if it's been something that has been recurring over the course of time, so that's become, you've been doing the same thing 10% for the past 5 years, you expect pushback if you only give them back 5% this year, kind of thing. So, um, the whole, in summary, my point is, go back and look at your employment contracts for various reasons and make sure that it aligns with what you've been doing and what you intend on doing in 2025.
You're on mute, Gary.
I would say I'd add one thing: talk to them about it, communicate. You know, it's so underrated because like it's amazing what can be done with a simple conversation versus, well, the agreement says, hey, let's have a conversation. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's
what
funny.
what
I was with
go
another
ahead.
client, kind of sticking with that theme. I was with another client the other day. It's like I I feel like, you know, maybe the compliance people are not going to get on me from Jack shot, but the Grinch people will. Um, so we're in the year-end planning meeting, and the guy's a cash basis taxpayer, which means that he's paying. Usually, what that means is whatever I feel like I made last year is what my taxable income is going to be this year. So if I had a great year last year on an accrual basis, it means I've got a good year this year from a cash basis. If I had a crap year this year on an accrual basis, it means that I'm going to have a crap year next year on a cash basis. Anyway, he's got a lot of income this year because he got paid a lot of his old outstanding accounts receivable, but on an accrual basis, he had a crap ass year, you know, and had a lot of personnel issues and stuff like that. It's like, well, should I pay out a year in bonus? And I was like, dude, that would lower your taxable income, of course. But what freaking message does that send?
Right.
It's like you got to think about that. It's like, yes, it will, in fact, Jack, lower your taxable income. And if you now want to be in the position of, it doesn't matter what you do, Gary, you'll always get a bonus around here, sir.
Participation trophies.
Yeah,
Woo!
I mean, you can do that, but I would not recommend it.
Yeah, it is funny how often we see people really make compromised decisions or that really aren't that smart just because they're trying to save some tax money. Like, wait a minute. Let's think. So saving, if your number one game is I just don't want to ever pay taxes, and I actually have a client like that, and he makes a ton of money, but I'm like, I don't know, man. You know, buying this or that just so you don't have to pay taxes, is that like really what you want to do? Not my money. So, um, so here's a grab bag question. Um, what do you guys think about Bill Belichick coming to UNC?
Oh, so you're going to throw that into the mix. Um, wow. So I'm as a double alum, I'm excited about it, but I also have a realistic view of it, which is that, that he has a way, he has his own style. Bringing that to the college ranks is going to be interesting. I know that we paid him because I pay my alumni dues, which is to the Rams Club, the educational fund, which is the Rams Club, paid him a lot of money in addition to the
Hmm.
school. Well, obviously, the school paid most of the freight. And so I think that the most frustrating aspect of all of that for him is going to be the fact that he is not in control of retention of his players. That if they don't like what's going on, or they get a bigger, better deal, or a lot of NIL money, they're gonna go. And he has star power, but at that age and that grade, they're gonna go with the money, I would think. I think that he will attract a lot of people that may not have otherwise been looking at UNC or even an ACC team. So I think he's lifted up the ACC and UNC, but there's also he comes with a lot of baggage too that I said previously that I'm like, okay, I'll maybe look the other way as far as his choices and girlfriends and ages and things like that. So
Hey, she's gonna graduate while he's there. So
Nah, I know. I mean that like so I'm kind of in the Jack boat. The parent, the Carolina Parents Board is blowing up, and it's like my my daughter was an athletic trainer up until this year with the football team. It's like when Drake May got drafted, that was like her class of like people because she went to she didn't go to Myers Park, but he lived up in Huntersville, so we've known the family for a long time. That was like her crew, of all those people. So when they graduated, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of waking up at 5 a.m. But it made me think, like, huh, that'd be funny. My daughter still works for the team. She's the same age almost as Bill Belichick's girlfriend, which is pretty much where all the parent boards are going. Not like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to have this many Super Bowl championships. I would also point out that I'm sure this is true, but it's like Belichick has not had too many winning football seasons outside of the Tom Brady era, you know,
yeah,
whereas Tom Brady's got another Super Bowl ring. So it's just food for thought, Jack. I'm sorry about that for you, but it's food for thought.
that is the question. Was it the coach? Because he got fired by the Browns, but that's not saying much. So
And quit the Jets in a fit of rage.
yeah, it'll be interesting. So sorry, I just had to throw that into the mix,
That's fine.
just because you
So
guys.
back on track. Anything else that we need to be thinking about before the end of the year?
I was wondering. Oh, I had one other thing kind of teed up here, and I can't find it. Um, so we've got a smaller audience because everybody's been doing the same thing we've been doing, which is slam 5 weeks of work into three. So, just as a reminder, we are off next week. Um, and we hope you will be too because it's Christmas. So enjoy that time. And then we are planning on being back on the second, because that is, I think, second, or is it the third? Hold on. Yeah, it's the second. So, you know, get the sleep out of everybody's eyes, and we'll be ready to hit it on the second with whatever craziness is coming our way. Um, and let me think what else. If you guys have any questions, like now is the time. You got a couple legal eagles and CPAs. Hey, Craig, thanks, man. It's
I,
been good having you on here too.
I want to bring up one more thing that a neuron fired when Adam said ask questions of your employees. I would say, and this goes under kind of general analytics and data review. There's a lot of data that you have in your businesses related to your customers, related to patterns and everything else. And let's say that, for whatever reason, a product hasn't been selling as well, and you have the information right in front of you, but you really shouldn't wait until Q2 of next year to figure out, okay, well, oh well, I ordered a bunch of stuff to make that product or this. So really take a look at the analytics that you have, and dig down a little bit into what's going on in your business. And I would say, ask your customers kind of what's on their mind. And I feel like I'm giving everyone a lot of homework to do maybe over the holidays or in January, but ask your customers, ask your suppliers kind of what they see going on. Is there a transition to whatever it may be? So you produce something and maybe AI is having an impact that maybe you're not aware of. So I would say be very inquisitive sooner than later. And then, back to an earlier point, ask your employees kind of what's going on. Like, okay, do they have any thoughts about using AI? Do they have any thoughts about maybe streamlining the process? And the reason why I think about that is I'm thinking about my business planning for 2025. And at what point, how soon into January am I going to call a meeting of my practice group and maybe bring them, to downstairs? We have a little coffee shop wine bar thing. Um, Hopefully I don't have to booze them up too much to get their honest opinion, but I'm willing to do that to find out what's on their mind. But, in a trusted environment where it's, the whole permission to speak freely thing, and no repercussions, retaliation. And just, hopefully you have those relationships with people, and not everybody's going to believe you when you say that, and put them in that environment. But I know for me, I have trusted people that if I ask, they will tell me. If I promise them that there's not going to be repercussions, and I'm not going to go and say, hey, you know what such and such said, that you're screwing up, kind of thing. And but as business owners, as business operators, I think we have a responsibility to know what's going on and not make assumptions. And but it's human nature to make assumptions that if it's not broke, there's nothing to fix. Well, it may be on the borderline of breaking, and we just don't know it. And if we had asked, we could have avoided the break. A lot of analogies today. Sorry.
Well, and Craig weighed in. He was paying attention. He says espresso martinis for everyone. That sounds terrible. I mean, you got somebody hyped up and then they're blathering. I mean, like that's terrible.
That's funny. That's sort of an inside joke I'll bring everybody into, because I did have an espresso martini with Craig and not so recently, but yes, and it was later on in the afternoon. I was like, okay, I need a little bit of a stimulant and a relaxant at the same time to be neutral. And I was like, all right, let me go for
Yeah, what is that like? I don't know, man. Truth serum.
it. It's like what you think it is. So I'll
That
buy
is
you one next
hilarious.
time. I'll buy one, and then you can try it. And then, to confirm your suspicions as to, yeah, it's just one of those things that, okay, yeah, gotta
That
do
would
it.
be very dangerous because I haven't had any alcohol in my system for probably 3 years, and I haven't had any caffeine besides green tea. So I think we could be in some deep trouble. Alex, hey, hit us with a question if you got a question, Alex. We'll answer. By the way, thank you guys for taking over last week while I was in surgery. Oh man, I would have much rather been with you guys.
Yeah,
But
did they get it right this time? I mean,
I was
yeah.
sorely disappointed the next day because I was like, they pull up the eye chart and I'm thinking I got a brand new expensive lens that insurance didn't pay for, even though I'd met all my deductibles and out of pocket. But oh no, they won't cover this one. I'm like, what in the world? But I'm like, Doc, I can't read the E. Like I'm supposed to like it's supposed to be clear. And he looks in there, he's like, oh yeah. And my wife was there and he says, here, look. She said, oh, what is that white thing? It's like a starburst or a, like a snowflake. He said, yeah, that's plaque that's built up on the backside of the membrane. That is actually from the last laser surgery when when my doc was using the laser. So he said, yeah, so it's kind of like you're looking through wax paper. I said, yeah, yeah. I was thinking, oh, this will be great. I'm gonna like let's do this. I'm like, it's not much better, and it's not as dark as the thick cataract. And he goes, yeah, it's probably going to get a little worse until it gets better. But he said we can zap it off with a laser, and he said that is not where we have to put you under general anesthesia. That sounds great. But we got to wait 3 or 4 months just to make sure that the retina is stable still. So Friday was a hard morning. But um, anyway, oh, hey, good to have you, AD. Let's see, just jumped on. Any news on ERC processing? Good question. And yeah,
Um, so I don't have any news other than we're starting to see some clients get paid, even those that were on uh, POs. So it seems so. My data point is if you had your if you had your application in before the moratorium, those seem to be trickling out. I haven't heard of any that have come in after the moratorium, meaning like, hey, there's still valid claims, but that it's after the IRS said, hey, we're not going to process any more applications until we sort all this stuff out. So we have started to see some people get paid, which is nice.
yeah. And I agree with you, Craig. For $6 billion in insurance money, they should have given me a bionic eye. I agree. Alex, thanks. That's helpful. We just got the application in just in time before the moratorium. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So, any other questions? Those are good. And we'll wait just a little bit longer. Anything else that we've missed, guys?
Not that I can think of.
I don't think so. I mean, I've had some various lists and we've covered pretty much everything in one form or fashion. Um, maybe maybe we didn't talk about what you should do first out of everything that we've talked about. So I don't know if you, Adam, have what should be everything that we've talked about. If you had a limited amount of time, what should be
Make
first
sure my
on that
paycheck
list?
is right as the owner. Like if I think about the single dumbest thing that we see people do, it's either overpaying or underpaying themselves.
Okay.
That's it. Because you can't because that there are permanent tax savings and there are temporary tax savings. So bought the truck December 31st versus bought the truck in January. It's like I'm gonna get the deduction anyway. I'm just debating the year. If I overpay myself, I overpaid Social Security and I overpaid at a higher tax rate. I can't get that crap back. So that would be that would be the single. You're not going to do anything else. Make sure that your wage and your balance between salary and distributions is dialed in because you can't fit like you can fix it after the end of the year, but I wouldn't advise it because it involves that is like one of those areas where it's like, well, Why did you think it was reasonable before, but you don't think it's reasonable now, such so that you amended your W-2? You know? So
Yeah.
you want your W-2 right the first time. Not I amended it based on, oh geez, I wish that I would have paid less in Social Security. That's my justification. So that's all.
Yeah, that's a good one, Adam. I'm glad you brought that up because we talked to a group, it's a big company that they've talked about leaving their other CPA because they've had to bring the CPA the ideas and versus the other way around. And but their plan was that they were going to move in May, and their CFO said, "Hey Gary, but if we do that, are you guys going to be punitive bringing, taxes to you?" And I said, "No, we're not punitive, but there are certain things that, like what Adam was just saying, that if you file your taxes with this other firm that had cost, like, we found hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that this other firm has missed. And that's not that unusual, actually. But I said, we can't put the cat back in the bag. Like, it's out. Like, now there's things that we can amend for, and you'll have to pay for that because, yeah, like, we have to spend time on doing amended returns. So, um, if you are thinking, well, um, we'll just keep it with the same firm now that's been falling asleep on the job for you, versus having somebody else do it. And this isn't a plug for us. Like, you may not even be the right fit for us. Um, I don't know that I would wait because there are certain things that can't be undone.
And
So,
like, hey Jack, can we that like Jack's version of that is, hey, we're gonna go ahead and close the transaction with these guys and write up the new operating agreement. But after they're done, can you review it and fix anything that needs to be fixed?
yeah.
Yeah,
So then
interesting.
we can get all people to vote on it so that it's in our favor. It's like,
Yeah, my response to that is, yeah, I don't rubber stamp. I don't have a rubber stamp that says, okay, per shoemaker that I put on documents. So, the one thing that I want to bring up, well, first of all, Gary, thanks for wearing the sweater. It's very festive and
it's it's
some
quite gross.
and distracting, yes, to say the least. I kept thinking I would know what to get you for Christmas, which is maybe some clippers for some manscaping, but okay, we're good. Um, I would say the one thing is the forecasting into next year, specifically related to cash flow. I see how, and I try not to get into the middle of businesses and on the financial side of things, but what I do see is reactive nature in end of January, beginning of February, where they're like, wait a minute, we just didn't anticipate this or anticipate that, so we have an issue. And so how do we deal with that? And so we're so focused at this point on closing out the bit on the business side of things, closing out the year, closing out well, getting everything done so we can take time off at the end of the year with family. And I think that we mentally say, okay, numbers go back to zero on January 1st. At least I do. Numbers go back to zero on January 1st, and I'll deal whatever I need to deal with after I come back from New Year's. And what happens is that because you haven't been at the steering wheel for a little bit of time, you're dealing with the small fires that have started as of the beginning of the year, which are carryovers from the end of this year. And then before you know it, it's February, and you're like, okay, well, I guess we'll just keep going because you don't have time to do the forecasting.
Yeah.
And so, and again, but the other side of me is I understand and appreciate we all need to take a break. And so, I'm struggling with, okay, what am I going to be doing the last week of the year other than closing transactions? But, am I going to take that mental break and really shut down, or am I going to take the time to, at my own pace, think about 2025? So it's a personal decision for everyone, but I'm sharing a trend that I see that it's just go time when we come back, and a lot of things that we thought we would be doing or have time to do doesn't come to fruition, and then we pay the penalty, the consequences into the next year, and it's a delayed impact. And when you see, you're like, you look back, you're like, oh gosh, didn't realize that, we might not have that customer, so we might not have that cash flow, or that supplies got more expensive. And it happened, there was a price increase at the beginning of the year that we sort of knew about, but we forgot about, but we didn't plan for. So now our costs have increased. So our bottom line is different than what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. My favorite thing in the world after Christmas and after the grandkids leave, and we get everything back to nice and calm and order, is I like to get real quiet and just, reflect back on the year. I like to do my Thrive Wither. I go back and, if you don't know what that is, it's a simple T chart that has the stuff that makes you come alive on one side and the stuff that makes you wither on the other side. But, even if it's just an afternoon, and if it's on New Year's Day, spend some time to be grateful and looking back over the year. It does a person really good. And then the other thing is, this is a plug, and there's nothing in it for me. And normally we charge for it, but we're not going to charge for this, I don't think. I just put a link to everybody for the best year ever. I've done it 5 years in a row. I've got all five of my previous charts, and it's really amazing. But it's like is it a 2 hour, 3 hour deal, I think. On January the 8th, everything is now remote because our in-person seats have been filled. I think we have like 45 or something like that in person. But last year we had about 100 between the two. But man, that is a really good thing. So best year ever. Give yourself some think time so that you're not reacting and just react. So that's in the chat for everybody. Grab it before we go. Any other last questions for anybody? All right. Well, um, I would say if you really wanted one of these drones, you could order it, but I ordered it and it came from DHL China, a couple years ago, and it took about 3 months to get here. So, that one's been through the ringer too many times, so it doesn't work as well. But let's see. Yeah, whatever. It's not worth it. I got ripped off.
Yeah, they work for about 5 minutes and then something happens. We had
Yeah.
one and it got flown into a ceiling fan that was in motion. It was kind of funny to
No.
see it happen, but it was like, okay, how about learning how to pilot it first? I mean, it wasn't an expensive one. It was it was a little helicopter. It's actually pretty
Oh
cool
yeah.
once
Yeah, those are
and
fun.
flying it in the house but yeah, apparently yeah, it lost control, and then once it hit, it broke little
Oh yeah.
piece, and then it went like you see on in a movie, it spiraling down and
Oh
crashes.
yeah.
But I
Let's
just want to
see.
say appreciate you guys, appreciate the people that continue to join us, and happy to do it and continue doing it so long as people want to hear from us. I really thought when I first started doing this with you guys that people be worn out and tired of hearing my voice over the course of time, but happy to share just practical things that I see, that we see going on with businesses, so that you can learn from it, and also we can learn from it. Like when we say stuff and we get responses back in the chat and questions that are asked, and it keeps us on our toes. I mean, I would say that we do a little bit of preparation beforehand, obviously, and it keeps me with in tune with current events and things that are going on, and maybe some things that I probably might otherwise not pay attention to, with my head in the sand, just doing what I do and not broadening my horizons. So I appreciate the opportunity and the challenge to do that on a week by week basis.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. And here's to a rockin' 2025.
Right.
All right. See
All
y'all.
right, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.